Back on MorningLine, thanks for joining us. Our guest with us this morning, one more segment, is Beth Brown with the Tennessee Education Association. We are streaming live on Facebook as well as taking phone calls here. This is our last segment with her, and then later in the program we'll be joined by Dr. Calvin Smith, frontline at Meharry. We'll have the very latest on the testing, some of the changes going on there, and what he thinks even about kids going back to school. But Beth, we have a few callers that waited through the break. Let's take Olivia. Olivia, good morning. What's your question or comment, Olivia?
Hi, I have a bit of both. So my first comment is, has anyone even considered the fact that people who originally had coronavirus have now been testing positive again? I don't think that you're really mitigating risks or considering anything when a child could die behind these situations. But my question is, how is it that a child can not enroll in school if they aren't vaccinated for illnesses that aren't an immediate threat, but a deadly virus with no vaccine or known cure at its height is safe for a child to go back to school? How do we reconcile that?
That's an interesting kind of comparison, Beth. We know that many school districts, require flu vaccinations just to keep kids from getting sick and having to shut down the schools for a while. And yet there's no vaccine for COVID yet. And we're thinking, well, come on to school with that. Do you see a comparison there?
I have seen a similar question posed on social media and heard it in different conversations. As an English teacher, I'm all about analogies. So I do understand the genesis of that question. I just have to acknowledge that I'm not a medical expert and I'm not the person who gets to make that decision. What my job is and what TEA's job is as an organization is to advocate for what is best for students and educators. And what we are advocating for is that that school buildings not open unless it's safe, and that when school buildings do reopen and in-person instruction resumes, that we continue to provide and require masks be worn and make sure that there are social distancing options available, as well as adequate disinfectant supplies.
Gotcha. All right, let's go next to, we have Tricia. Tricia, good morning. Hi, Tricia. What's your question?
Well, I got more like a comment. It's like,
Sure.
Okay, this COVID that's going on right now, and in the schools, with schools starting back, it's like a breeding ground for diseases. Okay, you got a child that's got a cold, it's gonna spread. Okay, and then I don't care how much disinfectant you use, the precautions you take, a child is not gonna understand that. They're gonna want to socialize with their buddies. They want to shake hands. It only takes one child if they're sick for it to go around. And God forbid that child dies, then they go back home, and then the parents have to deal with that. And it's like, okay, it's not my child. Sorry, but they don't cut it. It's this disease right now is taking over so many lives already. It's too early. I would rather for them to wait, get this under control, then start back schools.
Okay, fair enough. And let me ask you this, and you're hearing varying opinions. I'm seeing on Facebook there's some parents here saying they feel safe sending their children. I think I'm seeing more saying they're not so sure. As far as you know, Beth, are most of the school districts in the state offering the option of going to school or doing it online, or is that just a few of the districts right now?
I would say that most of the districts that I have seen have been surveying parents and communities and educators to see what the interest is to offer a remote learning situation. We do have to acknowledge that for many districts that's difficult because they may not have the capacity, they may not have the technology, and the communities may not have the broadband access to adequately do that. But I do believe that a vast majority of districts are having those conversations with parents and looking at providing some sort of remote learning option.
Yeah, I see Sean here saying that where they live, they have trouble getting Wi-Fi, and you're right. Yeah, the backdrop against all this as we're discussing it that really bothers me, unfortunately, is that these are kids that need to be in school or at home, or I guess what I should say, these are kids that need to be learning wherever it may be happening. And it just, this just is setting everything back, no matter how you slice it, whether it ends up in the classroom or whether it ends up doing it at Wi-Fi at home in your living room. It's not the same. It's not the same, and I think we all have to acknowledge that, at least right now, until we can beat this virus back. It's not the same, and I worry about the quality of education youngsters are getting during this year 2020. It's not on par with what we've seen in the past, and hopefully, it'll be better in the future.
Well, I will tell you, as an educator and as an organization of educators, by educators, and for educators, PEA wholeheartedly agrees that nothing compares to in-person instruction from a highly trained professional. Virtual learning does not adequately capture the magic that happens every day in Tennessee's public school classrooms. That said, we do have to make sure that we are continuing to provide education in the safest way possible. So while educators want nothing more than to be back in the classrooms with our students, we do have to make sure that we are behaving and making decisions in the safest way possible.
Let's take a call from Ann, who I know has some thoughts always about education. Good morning to you, Ann.
Good morning. Many years ago, I was privileged with the honor of serving on the design team that built a metro school from the ground up. Literally dug the shovel in the ground, picked out every toilet from the flagpole to every square inch of the entire school. Not every parent gets to do that. It is still one of my greatest honors here in Metro as I pass that school today. Unfortunately, Metro approved a budget, and it was 9 years later that the school was built. It was built with fewer classrooms than the original school had.
Hey, Ann, you've got to get to your point. Ann, what's your point about COVID?
The point is we have overcrowded classrooms. There is no way to start schools with social distancing when we already have overcrowded schools.
You know what? That's a very good point I think she makes. Do you want to address that? I know a lot of communities are building more schools as quickly as they can, and everything we hear about at the collegiate level, where they're going to have classes, and when they can, they're going to social distance between each student. And I know in some of these, middle schools, elementary schools, those classrooms are packed with kids. How do you adjust to this if a bunch of them do come back, which is their right if their parents send them? How are you going to keep them socially safe? And on top of it, the little ones, getting them to keep the mask on, come on, that's going to be a pickle.
So these are concerns that TEA has raised at the state level in our conversations with the Department of Education and the State Board of Education as well. I'm a high school English teacher. I average 32 students in a class, and was asked last week, well, how would you set up your classroom? I was like, I could take out everything in my classroom except for student desks and still not meet the CDC guidelines. TA is certainly not arguing that social distancing with classes of large numbers of students is possible. That is definitely a concern that we have, and it's something that continues to guide our conversations as we are meeting with state policymakers.
Gotcha. Well, listen, I really appreciate you joining us this morning, and I think a lot of parents and school districts are going, and your organization are going to have some tough decisions to make here in the next couple of weeks. And as you said, I think, Beth, the priority is the health and safety of everyone as best you can, at the same time educating our children, which is crucial. So thank you so much for coming on. You stay well, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Nick. Same to you.
It's a real pleasure. Beth Brown with the Tennessee Education Association. We'll take a break, and when we come back, strap yourself in. Dr. Calvin Smith, he's great. He's knowledgeable. He's from Meharry. He's been involved with many of the testing stations here in the metro area and beyond. We'll get the latest from him. If you have questions, man, we'll ask him what he thinks. If he has children, is he sending them back to school? Because he's seeing folks come through, and he's seeing many of the people who have gotten sick with COVID, including, I would imagine, some younger folks. We'll get his take on it and take your questions from Facebook, and if you want to join us by phone, call us. We'll be right back right after this.